It was Thursday. Well, of course, it's Thursday. Thursdays, as if a mockery from corporations. I just sat down with a measly mug of coffee from the break room. It tastes like cardboard with betrayal. And then Mara, the new COO with the short hair and the look, jumps onto the stage, as if she were a goddess. No agenda, no introduction. With just a cold smile and her signature tone, I eat sympathy for breakfast. She said, "From this moment on, that position is completely abolished. No one here is irreplaceable. Everyone is replaceable." Bach, and that's it. 12 years of work in the company. 12 damn years of assembling systems on the fly and saving clients from our own stupidity. And all this was swept away in one sentence, as if they had declared the Sabbath. The silence after her words was not from shock. No, it was a corporate silence when everyone is afraid to even breathe, lest they be next. I didn't flinch, I just felt my back become as hard as steel. Something broke not in me, but around me. And then I saw him. In the third row sat Aaron from the AM and a team. The same man who was going to pour $400 million into this circus tent. He didn't clap, didn't smile, and looked at Mara as if she had insulted his family. Then he made the most beautiful thing I saw all week. He slowly and deliberately closed the leather notebook, as if it were gelatin. Okay, listen carefully before we go any further. If you enjoy this mess, admit it, we all slowed down to watch the accident. So, do me a favor, like and subscribe. Seriously? 97% of you here are ghosts. Watch, but don't subscribe. And it's free and gives us fuel, coffee, and petty revenge. Plus, it helps tell stories that HR praise never come alight. Well, let's get back to the slaughter. I didn't flinch, didn't say a word, just stood up, buttoned my jacket, and nodded as if I'd been given a piece of mediocre cake. Orla looked at me as if I was about to collapse, cry, or thank her. But no, I walked slowly and calmly towards the exit, and 200 employees stared at the floor as if salvation was there. But I didn't leave the building. I walked past the reception desk, past the gossipers at the copy machine, and into a small room on the side. Real work was always done there. It smelled like burnt popcorn, and the ice machine coughed like a smoker. It was there 5 minutes later that Aaron found me. His tie was already loosened, apparently. I knew what was about to happen. "Do you have a minute?" he asked. I took a sip of weak, bitter coffee and waved at the cracked sofa as if it were my place. He sat down, paused for a second, and said, "Did she just fire the only person who understands how your systems tie into our integration plan?" I shrugged. "Looks like it." He exhaled through his nose. "Lord, I hear this often." This was a real start. Neither dismissal nor a closed notebook. From that moment on, everything turned upside down. It didn't even turn over, but spun like a roulette wheel. And for the first time, I wasn't that unfortunate guy who bets on black. He leaned forward. "Off the record, I need to understand how deeply you are involved in all of this. Let's talk." I looked at him, ice inside, calm. "Do you want the truth or the version Mara gave the lawyers?" "Let's start with the truth." And I told. And somewhere there, satisfied with her public execution, Mara didn't even suspect. The man she considered an extra was already starting to rewrite my future without her. The general meeting dispersed as if someone had thrown a smoke bomb. People scattered, whispered, hid their eyes, as if they were afraid that the floor would call them next. I stayed in the lounge, looking at the fake fireplace. The heart beat evenly, coldly, like a surgeon's. 12 years of working with looming deadlines and crooked contracts either breaks you down or makes you dangerous. I chose the second one. I felt movement at the door. Aaron from the acquisitions team looked up. No mask, just the grim face of a man who realized that someone had taken a dump right in his sandbox. "Got a minute?" he asked again, but more quietly, harshly. I nodded and pushed the empty mug away. "Always." He closed the door softly, as if it were a confessional, and sat down opposite. No laptop, no paper, just his fingers pressed together as if he held the fate of the entire company between them. "Let's talk honestly," he said. "We were told it was just to get together, but that's not why I'm here." I raised an eyebrow. "No," he shook his head. "I've been quietly checking your systems, talking to key clients, trying to understand the risks. And your name is on every critical process. compliance, client retention, data integration, vendor management. Your initials are everywhere. I leaned back, crossing my legs as if a neon sign hadn't flashed in my head. Mara's career ended here. Amazing, I said beautifully. I always thought I was just a cog in a machine. He chuckled. You're a blueprint. We sat in the heavy silence of mutual understanding. In the distance, I could hear Mara's heels clicking. She paced the hallway like a hyena, searching for a camera. My phone vibrated. A message. Char was asking if I wanted an exit interview. I turned off the phone, and Aaron leaned closer. Look, between you and me, if you're not involved in this deal, we're going to have to go. I leaned forward. Not surprised, just weighing my options. Are you serious? He nodded. We can't take the black box. The entire audit report was based on your transition plan. No plan, no deal. Mara was looming behind the glass. She was feigning busyness, chatting on her phone about nothing in particular, but in reality, she was peeking at us in the reflection, like a kid at a candy display. Aaron noticed her too. His eyes narrowed. Did she really think a public firing was a good idea? I half smirked. Mara was the kind of executive who thinks a chainsaw is a management style. He laughed for real, but immediately rubbed his eyes wearily, as if he were aging on the spot. Damn, what a mess. No, I said, standing up. This is an opportunity. He stood up too. We shook hands, not with desperation, but with clear understanding. He paused at the door. I'll be in touch soon. I need to talk to my team. I'm here, I replied. I'm in no hurry to leave when I have the blueprints in my hands. He opened the door and left. At that moment, Mara floated down the hallway, as if she'd just spoken to an opera diva. Her smile was too wide, as if she were trying to cover a corpse with glitter. We can talk. Her voice was sweet, like the letters where best wishes are mixed with the threat of layoffs at Christmas. I didn't stop. A little busy, Mara. Then she blinked. Her smile wavered, as if her body betrayed her for a second. I walked past without looking back, but I felt her mask begin to crack. Every step I took pulled a thread from the hem of her carefully crafted career. She thought she'd won. She hadn't read the fine print yet. The next day, we met at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. They charged $5 for a regular coffee. The laborers with tattoos on their arms looked like they played carpet groupers again in the evenings. And Aaron was already sitting at a table in the corner. Shirt with rolled-up sleeves, phone face down. This was his way of showing his seriousness. Usually, such impersonal guys hold their phones in their hands like ancient Romans held their wine glasses. Thank you for coming, he said, nodding toward the chair opposite. No problem, I replied, putting down the coffee. I'm between quarries. He smiled dryly, but his eyes remained serious. Tired, not from flights, but from strategy. It was that tiredness when you see $1 million mechanism entrusted to a child with a hacksaw. I want to understand exactly what you were doing, he said, opening a small notebook, old-fashioned, and I need details. I told everything calmly and directly, without embellishment, just the facts. I personally managed 5 major client accounts. Not just calls and extensions, but all the complex VIP connection situations. Everyone had my personal number. He nodded and took notes. I built the data integration system you now receive. API channels, migration templates, compatibility with legacy systems. When I arrived, there was snot and prayers, not a functioning structure. I also implemented a compliance plan for SOC 2 audit standards, GDPR, and internal processes. I signed the last 2 external audits. In your legal team's documents, I am listed as the official contact person. And then his pen froze. He looked up, his jaw tensing. And how many other people have access to these systems? I took a sip of coffee. Technically, a couple of people have view-only access, but I'm the only one with full admin access. His nostrils flared slightly. That is, if something breaks now, client processes, systems, or an error pops up in Complos, who can fix it? I bow my head as if thinking, well, I can send Maria a link to a video on YouTube. But other than that, no one. He leaned back, tapping his fingers on the table as if counting red flags. Incredible, he muttered. She fired you in front of everyone. That's right. He chuckled softly, tired. This isn't just bad management. It's like setting fire to the blueprints right during a house inspection. I said nothing. You don't brag at times like that. You need to let the words sink in. You see, he said quietly, we can't close a deal with that level of risk. If all the systems are tied to you alone and you get fired, the deal basically burns out. I shrugged. I realized that back then. He leaned forward. Why didn't you say anything yesterday? Because panic stinks. Ahon. And I don't like the smell of despair on me. He nodded slowly, with new respect. We were silent. Only the coffee machine hissed and soft jazz played overhead. Jesus, he said almost to himself. She was supposed to clean up the mess. Mara, I chuckled. Mara thinks leadership is about proving she's the smartest person in the room. The problem is, she walked into a room that others had already built. He smiled, but his face remained tense. He was thinking, seriously thinking, not just about me, but about the consequences. How many clients would leave if I disappeared? How many complex issues would surface without me? How much of those 400 million was actually tied to the person Mara had just turned into an extraneous element? I want to make it clear, he finally said. We don't want a hostile environment, but we do need stability and continuity. I nodded. You're thinking about the succession plan, and I'm thinking about leverage for both of us. I didn't smile. I just leaned back in my chair and let the moment hang in the balance. Then I realized Mara had screwed up for a reason. She'd removed the only person who made her seem competent. And mistakes like that always come at a price. By 1 o'clock, the clouds were starting to gather. Aaron had canceled all his meetings with her managers. Not rescheduled, exactly, canceled. It was as if the air had vanished on the top floor. I could feel it, sitting 2 floors below, sipping a soda from the vending machine, as if I were watching an accident in slow motion on security cameras. Around 2, I got a message. Mate, we can discuss it quickly. Just to be clear, this is HR code. Basically, I didn't expect the consequences. Now pretend the knife in the back is a friendly handshake. I stared at the message for so long that the soda had time to get warm. Then I replied, I appreciate you writing, but I don't think this is necessary. I read it right away. There was no reply. But then the fun began, because Mara is an unusual person. She's like a robot vacuum cleaner possessed by the spirit exorcised by a dorm leader. When something doesn't go according to her plan, she doesn't change tactics. She doubles down pressure. And while she was rushing around, trying to figure out why the guy from the acquisitions team had stopped communicating with her, I calmly scheduled a call with his lawyers. A completely different energy. About 10 minutes after my reply to my SLC, Jamie from finance, one of the few normal people, wrote to me. Listen, they say she was counting on a 6-figure bonus from the deal. If the deal falls through, she'll be left with nothing. I sat back and let this thought sink in. And then everything fell into place. All that show-off at the general meeting, her phrases being completely replaceable. That's not about leadership. It was a performance. She was trying to show off her strength in front of the deal team. But the problem is, she fired the lighting technician right in the middle of the performance, and the stage plunged into darkness. Another Slack from Jamie came in. She has a clause in her contract for a year. If the deal closes, she gets paid. If not, she's just another angry PowerPoint presentation. I smiled so hard I almost burst. Cheek. Meanwhile, in the office, Mara was pacing around her glass aquarium office like a tiger in a cage that's too small. Everyone saw. In stilettos, you can't walk 5 kilometers unnoticed on a smooth floor. This morning, she tried to shine in front of the top brass, and now they were turning away. Some had already started whispering about her behind closed doors. Quiet, cautious conversations. Rumors circulated like contraband. Emails with vague subjects like, quick question, or we'll come back later. One of the bosses even walked past my desk and muttered, Dude, what did you tell him? I just shook my head. Nothing. Just the truth. He looked at me like I'd summoned a witch. At 4:42 p.m., a new email from Mara arrived. Subject, follow-up. Transition support. I clicked read and forgot. That's the thing about panic. You can feel it. It seeps into the carpet, into the ventilation, into the tone of every desperate message from the person who thought that he was untouchable until the floor fell out from under his feet. For 2 weeks, Mara waved her SOA title like a club, fired people without warning, pushed for process audits, and burst into meetings with proposals that were more like ultimatums. Everyone endured, thinking that in the end there would be a pleasant deal and the new owner would smooth everything over. But now the buyer wasn't responding to her emails. Her leadership image had turned to silence, and the only person who really understood how the whole system worked ignored her with the cold indifference of a cat looking at a vacuum cleaner. And the funniest thing is, she still thought everything could be saved. She didn't understand the main thing. I'm no longer her employee. I'm her consequences. Dinner was at a pretentious steakhouse downtown. Dim lighting, leather booths, a wine list longer than corporate regulations. I showed up in a regular shirt without a tie. Sleeves rolled up. Let the suits play its seriousness. I've earned a right to comfort. And Aaron was already waiting. With him were 2 lawyers and a man from the operations department. Smiles, handshakes, nods. They weren't just attracting me, they were rechecking me. But now they understood that I was the missing piece of the puzzle, not a screw that could be replaced. They ordered drinks. I wanted bourbon neat. By the time the appetizers arrived, the politeness had ended. Aaron leaned over and lowered his voice. Let's be honest, we've studied your system. We see all the dependencies. And honestly, we can't close the deal without you. I didn't blink. Then don't close it. Silence fell at the table. A second, as if I'd thrown a grenade into a bread box. I wasn't bluffing. I just wasn't afraid of silence. And Aaron smiled slightly. We're going the wrong direction. We need a bridge. He pushed the folder over. Inside, 1 sheet of paper, clear, simple, even offensively simple. Consultant Ergram. Term 6 months. Rate $40,000 per month. Remote work. Flexible schedule. Task. Transition support and consulting. Non-assumptions canceled. Reporting to the buyer's director of operations. I looked up. Klaus, there's no share. Accelerated accrual according to your original terms, he said. We've already discussed this with the lawyers. I sat back and let the offer breathe. You're not just putting on a Band-Aid. Are you assembling a parachute? Aaron nodded. We provide stability for both parties. You leave with money, clarity, and control. We get a deal that won't fall apart in 6 weeks. I took a sip of bourbon and felt the burn. Will I report to you? I asked. And Aaron shook his head. No, just for us while the transition lasts. Then you're free. We don't demand anything. The female lawyer added. You will have complete freedom. You solve problems and deadlines yourself and work remotely without supervision. Consider it a paid vacation with benefits. I looked at the paper. $40,000 a month. Remote work. Nomada. It would seem like something to be happy about, but when you have the cards in your hands, you can't show greed. I tapped my finger on a sheet. I want written guarantees of independence. No slacks with Mara. And I decide for myself how to transfer knowledge. And Aaron nodded. We'll do it again. My severance pay in full. No tricks. The guy from the OPS wrote something down. We're already transferring. The money will be by Monday. I looked at them. 3 people looked at me not as a problem, but as a necessity. And for the first time since that meeting, I felt not anger, not a desire for revenge, but relief. Orla fired me to prove that I was replaced. These same people offered $240,000 simply because I would be there at will. I put the papers back in a folder. I'll think about it until tomorrow. And Aaron smiled. Of course, but I think you already know the answer. He was right. It wasn't about the money. I was choosing who would never again be my boss. The news reached Mara quickly. In glass-walled offices, rumors fly fast. By the next morning, she was already scurrying around the floor like a blender with nuts inside. I was calmly sitting in a conference room on the 12th floor, discussing the second version of the contract with the buyer's lawyer. They'd added a clause. Mara has no right to contact me without my permission. Legalese? Yes, but the meaning was simple. You don't go near him. I was drinking my second coffee when the door swung open. Mara burst in without knocking. Her lips were pressed together. Her eyes were shining, her heels clicking like a bomb timer. Why are you meeting with the buyer's lawyers without my approval? She barked. I took my time. I finished the note, carefully folded the page, put down the pen, then looked up and smiled calmly because I was no longer your employee. She paused for a second, as if she'd been hit with a rolled-up NDI. That's a protocol violation, she blurted out. I corrected your protocol. It no longer works on me. Attorney Jessica, cold as a blade, didn't even flinch. She just took a sip of tea, as if she were watching a documentary. Predator meets smarter predator. Mara looked from me to Jessica. I should be aware of these conversations. Have you been there yet? Jessica replied. Her voice was polite, but like poison. Until they fired the one who was key to the transition. Now we're just saving the situation. Mara stared at me again, but there was something new in her gaze. It wasn't just anger. Beneath it, there was panic covered by a thin layer of control. She'd miscalculated, fire the wrong person. Now she was trying to pretend nothing had happened, even though she'd lost the key piece in her game. Don't you dare get around me, she hissed. I leaned back in my chair and clasped my hands behind my head. I didn't bypass you. You opened the door yourself and invited me to come out. She stepped closer. Do you think this makes you irreplaceable? No. Yen suarat calmly. You yourself said that I am replaceable. I'm only here as a favor to them. Jessica nodded at the folder in front of me. And for this favor, you are fairly paid, by the way. By the way, your severance package is currently being reviewed. It will be ready by the end of the day. Mara's face twitched. Ah, I said almost affectionately. HR didn't tell you. She didn't answer. She stood frozen, her face struggling between rage and understanding. She thought that firing me would make her strong, but by firing me, she threw away the only card she didn't even know existed. And now I was being brought back into the deal, but not through her. Mara turned sharply and walked out. The door clicked behind her. Jessica looked up from the contract. Well, that was interesting. I raised my mug. For failed attempts to demonstrate power. We both understood that the deal had not stopped, it had changed. The buyer wanted not only the company, but also control over who stayed and who went. And guess who they were about to show the door? Mara. On Friday morning, the board of directors held an emergency meeting behind closed doors. An unusual meeting, neither a single nor a neighborhood check. It was almost military-level alert, just with croissants. It was all serious. They brought in an outside lawyer and took over the war room on the 22nd floor, the one with the curtains and the mini fridge locked inside. Aaron laid everything out calmly and clearly. We are ready to move forward with the purchase, but now there is one condition: to keep Tata under a separate contract. If he leaves, we leave too. Silence. Someone coughed into their sleeve. One of the directors glanced at Mara. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed tension, and on her neck you could see the small muscle under her jaw twitching like a dying fly. What does this mean? Asked one of the vice presidents, feigning neutrality, but already sensing the mood in the room. He'd been fired. Aaron shrugged. So the deal was gone too. The chairman leaned forward. Mara, did you know it all depended on him? She cleared her throat. The systems are documented. He's not the only one influencing them. Aaron didn't raise his voice or look away. Your documentation describes the processes, but he created them. You can't transfer rights to something tied to his personal account. Oral nodded silently next to him. The clause in the contract was already written, and it was ironclad. Either I was brought back into the game, or the deal fell apart. By lunchtime, the messages started. Mara wrote directly. We can return to our conversation. I would like to discuss the possibility of restoration. I didn't respond. Then an email arrived. Subject: New opportunity for collaboration. The tone was corporate optimism mixed with despair. They offer me my old position, a slightly higher salary, a chance to finish what I started. To finish. I had already finished everything. She just walked through the ashes and pretended the house was still standing. I responded with one line. Thank you for the offer, but I have accepted a more suitable option. 5 minutes later, I signed a consultant contract with the buyer. The money arrived in the account before the ink had even dried. The first payment was $140,000. Bonuses were recalculated and doubled. The shares were immediately transferred to me. Full access and freedom. In 1447, an internal memo came out. According to the purchase agreement, he remains an external consultant to oversee the transition period. In 1510, another one. Mara's bonus scheme will be reviewed after the transition is complete. Transfer. There will be no bonus. I sat in the car outside the building and watched the employees go out for a late lunch. Mara walked through the door with a tense face, pressing the phone to her ear. Did she see me? Maybe, but more likely she just didn't understand how the story had turned so quickly. She wanted to take me out, make a sudden move, but sudden moves don't work when the other player has the map, the keys, and a backup copy of the entire system on a flash drive at home called Don't Be a Fool, Ved. I didn't need revenge. I had a contract. On Monday at 9:12 a.m., the money arrived in the account. I stared at the notification on my phone, sipping fresh coffee on the dock of my lake house. A real house, insulated, with fast internet and smart locks. I bought it 5 years ago for my retirement. It turned out that retirement came early thanks to a woman who didn't understand either version control or people. $240.1 and half up front. The rest in equal installments over 6 months. No trips to the office, no dress code, no pings on Slack, as if I'd served my time with boundary issues. Just me, a laptop, a kayak, and a contract that clearly stated, not a single extra hour on call. Another notification arrived. The shares had transferred completely, without kickbacks. The share price soared on rumors of a purchase. Funny how confidence in management affects value. By 11 a.m., it was all official. A press release. The deal was complete. A key consultant was staying on for the strategic transition. My name wasn't mentioned, probably a favor from Aaron, but everyone inside the company knew. AI was on every calendar under the integration tag. Only now I wasn't an employee, but a consultant. And across town, in a boardroom with frosted glass and sad muffins, Mara was supposedly reporting for the last time. Jamie, a lover of office gossip, told her she'd asked about the bonus. The chairman looked her straight in the eye and said, change, no bonus. Not transferred, deleted, they say. She nodded, kept her face as if everything was fine, and then sat for 20 minutes in the toilet, the door closed and her heels off. Maybe she cried in there, maybe she screamed in her sleeve. I didn't see, and that was the whole point. She didn't get a golden parachute, didn't get a payout. Her name wasn't even in the press release. And I got better than revenge. I got distance. I closed the laptop, leaned back in my chair, and let the morning sun do its thing. A heron stood at the edge of the water, motionless as a statue, as if even she understood that this was a moment of silence. I didn't rejoice out loud, didn't write victory messages to anyone, just exhaled. 12 years of chaos, canceled vacations, and eternal compromises finally paid off. Now I have 6 months of calm, consulting on my terms, at my pace. Stability, freedom, a victory that doesn't need applause. Just a comfortable chair, strong coffee, and a view of Mara without a smirk. The first general meeting was held on Thursday in a closed circle, almost poetic. An online call at 10 a.m. On the screen, about 40 faces in square windows. The buyer's executives, integration lawyers, a few old acquaintances I hadn't seen since Mara put herself in the CEO's shoes, like an unnecessary firmware update. Aaron opened the meeting calmly and matter-of-factly. Thank you for joining. We are excited to begin this new phase. To ensure stability during the transition, I want to introduce the person who will be key to our work. He paused, and people exchanged glances. Our external consultant is someone many of you already know. I turned on the microphone. Good morning. A couple of nods, a couple of smiles. Even a guy from security gave a thumbs up. No one clapped. This wasn't that kind of meeting, but there was a sense of relief in the air. I was back and on my own terms. Mara wasn't there. Not a little square with the word CEO written on it. A frozen face with an air of interest. Someone in the chat asked if she would be there. No one answered. And by lunchtime, a message appeared. Ms. M is looking for new opportunities. In translation from corporate, she was escorted out of the office with a yellow folder and a box of sadness. She didn't even have time to update LinkedIn with the word successfully. I listened to the rest of the call, intervening only when necessary. I saw how the executives finally breathed a sigh of relief. They were no longer tiptoeing, they were reorganizing. I wasn't going to control every little detail. My job was to bring the plane to a landing without turbulence, collect the golden parachute, and fly off into the sunset. After the meeting, I went out onto the terrace. The lake was smooth as glass. Fog rose from the water. My tablet vibrated next to my coffee. Notifications from a business blog. The deal was closed. Strategic transition led by an internal systems architect. I opened the news. Not a word about Mara. But 3 paragraphs later, my name was there. A quiet professional, calm, confident. According to sources, the transition is being overseen by a longtime process architect working under an independent contract. Not loud, not flashy. Just a line that said, "It's important." I took a sip of real coffee, not that sloppy mess from the office kitchen. Beans, French press, steam in the morning light. No fireworks, no speeches about space. Just the peace and quiet that comes when all the unnecessary noise finally leaves the building. M.